First contact. "This planet wants us dead," Dr. Eliza Rice announced, her voice unnervingly calm as she studied the atmospheric readings on her tablet. Not in an anthropomorphic sense, obviously, just in the sense that approximately 97% of its observable biosphere appears specifically optimized to kill carbon-based life forms like us. Captain Maya Chen didn't look up from a holographic projection of XR-27 rotating slowly above the bridge's central console. The planet's surface was a roiling mess of blues, greens, and angry reds that pulsed like a heartbeat. "That's why they sent us, Doctor. Nobody maps Deathworlds quite like the Improbable Survival." The Galactic survey vessel Improbable Survival hung in high orbit around XR-27, the last unmapped Deathworld in charted space, a massive, ungainly vessel that looked like someone had welded together 3 different ships as an architectural joke. It housed the most specialized planetary survey team in the United Federation. They were the cartographers of last resort, the ones dispatched when conventional mapping teams refused to go or never returned. Dr. Sanjay Kapoor, the ship's exobiologist, snorted as he entered the bridge. 97%. Those are rookie numbers. Remember Tartarus IV. Everything there secreted acid, even the rocks. The rocks weren't alive. Rice countered. "Tell that to my dissolved boot," Kapoor replied, dropping into his console chair. According to historical records, XR-27 has claimed 18 previous expeditions. That's more than any other Deathworld in the catalog. This will be the 19th attempt. Maya studied the swirling patterns of the planet's atmosphere. What made UNEX decide it was worth another try? Chief Science Officer Dr. Aidan McKay cleared his throat. "Resource scans from orbit indicate unusual concentrations of hyperdense, exotic matter in the planet's core. Materials with applications for interstellar travel, if we could access them." "Money," translated Security Chief Talia Diaz, idly spinning a combat knife between her fingers. "It's always money." "Don't be cynical," McKay admonished. "It's knowledge. Pure research. The applications will make someone very rich," Diaz finished. "But I'm not complaining. Rich people pay our salaries." Maya zoomed in on a relatively stable-looking landmass near the equator. "What do we know about the previous expeditions?" "Not much," replied Communications Officer Jamie Park. "The last one, about 20 years ago, managed a partial atmospheric survey before going silent. The one before that barely made it through the upper atmosphere before their ship was shredded by what witnesses described as atmospheric fauna. Flying predators." Kapoor perked up. "Or defense systems," muttered Diaz. Maya turned to face her assembled team, the strange elite crew she'd handpicked for this mission. Every one of them was uniquely qualified, brilliant in their fields, and, as UNEX psych evaluations delicately phrased it, possessing unconventional risk assessment parameters. In layman's terms, they were all slightly unhinged in precisely the way one needed to be to voluntarily map Deathworlds. "Vixen, give me the latest atmospheric scan," Maya commanded. The ship's AI materialized as a holographic fox with glowing violet eyes. "Atmospheric composition is highly unstable, Captain. Unusual levels of reactive compounds creating localized weather systems that shouldn't theoretically be possible. I'm also detecting energy patterns that don't match any known natural phenomena." "Artificial?" McKay asked. "Unknown," Vixen replied. "But they appear purposeful." Maya nodded. "All right. We'll deploy atmospheric probes first, then consider landing options based on the data. Standard Deathworld protocol." "Boring," muttered Dr. Viktor Nazarov, the team's physicist, who had been silently observing until now. "The last 18 expeditions likely did the same thing. We should try something different." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Like what exactly?" Nazarov grinned. "A direct landing, minimal equipment, maximum mobility. Get in, get samples, get out." "Absolutely not," McKay protested. "Protocol exists for a reason. And it's failed 18 times, Nazarov countered. Maya held up a hand to silence them both. We'll follow protocol, with modifications. Probes first, but we'll design them differently. If this planet has encountered our tech before, let's give it something new to think about. The next 12 hours were a frenzy of activity as the team prepared specialized probes designed to analyze the planet while resisting its hostile environment. Each incorporated experimental technology that had been developed since the last failed expedition. Launching probes in 3, 2, 1, Park announced, fingers dancing across the control panel. On the main view screen, a dozen tiny silver objects detached from the improbable survival and descended toward XR-27's swirling atmosphere. For a few moments, all was well. The probes transmitted clear data, identifying atmospheric layers, temperature gradients, and chemical compositions. Then, exactly 27.4 kilometers into the descent, all 12 probes simultaneously failed. What just happened? Maya demanded. Vixen's fox avatar looked troubled, ears flattening. Unknown, Captain. There was no malfunction. The probes simply stopped existing. That's impossible, McKay protested. Replay the final telemetry, ordered Maya. The screens displayed the last moments from each probe's sensors. Nothing unusual appeared, until Kapoor pointed at a barely perceptible ripple in the atmosphere. There, something moved. Enhancing, Vixen said. The image zoomed and clarified to reveal what looked like a massive diaphanous net stretching across the upper atmosphere. It appears to be a biological structure approximately 30 kilometers wide. A living net, Rise whispered, waiting in the atmosphere for prey. Or for probes, Diaz said grimly. Nazarov clapped his hands together. Fascinating. The probability of such an adaptation evolving naturally is infinitesimal. This suggests intelligence. Or someone designed it. Diaz suggested darkly. Maya studied the image. We need more information. Prepare the shuttle for a manned reconnaissance mission. I want a team ready in 2 hours. McKay looked alarmed. Captain, with all due respect. I'll be leading the mission myself, Maya continued. Dr. Kapoor, Dr. Nazarov, you're with me. Talia, I want you handling security. Small team, minimal equipment, maximum mobility, just like Victor suggested. Diaz grinned. Finally, some action. The shuttle improbable cause was everything the mothership wasn't. Sleek, agile, and built for rapid atmospheric entry and exit. As Maya piloted it toward XR-27, she kept the craft in an unpredictable spiral pattern. If that net is waiting for us, I'd rather not fly straight into it, she explained. The biological implications are staggering, Kapoor mumbled, eyes glued to his sensors. An atmospheric organism of that size would require an entirely novel biological structure. Focus, Diaz reminded him. Novel biology can still kill you. They hit the upper atmosphere at an oblique angle, sensors sweeping for any sign of the massive net structure. Nothing appeared. The shuttle descended further, through cloud layers that shimmered with bioluminescent particles. Beautiful, breathed Nazarov. Everything beautiful on a Deathworld is usually deadly, Diaz observed. As they broke through the lowest clouded layer, the planet's surface came into view, a landscape so alien and yet hauntingly familiar that everyone fell silent. Massive structures dotted the terrain below, not natural formations, but unmistakably artificial. Geometric shapes, perfect circles, long straight lines forming complex patterns that were visible even from their altitude. Are those cities? Kapoor whispered. Vixen, compare these structures to known alien architectural patterns, Maya ordered through the comm. After a moment, the AI responded. No match found in the database, Captain. These structures do not conform to any known civilization's building patterns. Maya directed the shuttle toward a relatively flat area near one of the smaller structures. We're setting down for a brief surface reconnaissance. 1 hour, no more. The landing was smoother than expected. The shuttle's sensors indicated breathable atmosphere, unusual for a Deathworld, and moderate temperatures. Still, protocol demanded full environmental suits. "Remember," Maya cautioned as they prepared to disembark, "we observe only. No samples yet. No interaction with the local biology. We're just establishing baseline parameters for a proper expedition later." Diaz checked her pulse rifle. "Somehow, I doubt the planet will extend us the same courtesy." The moment the shuttle door opened, they were hit by a wall of scents. Rich, organic, reminiscent of Earth's rainforests, but with unfamiliar notes that made Kapoor sneeze inside his helmet. "Spore density is remarkable," he noted, checking his handheld analyzer. "Highly complex organic compounds in the air." They stepped onto the surface of XR-27, the 19th expedition to do so. The ground beneath their boots was firm but slightly springy, covered in a carpet of what appeared to be violet moss that retracted slightly at their touch. "It's responding to pressure," Nazarov observed, kneeling to examine it more closely without actually touching it. "The whole planet seems to be watching us," Diaz muttered, scanning their perimeter continuously. They had landed approximately half a kilometer from one of the geometric structures, which now loomed before them like a massive stepped pyramid, composed of some dark, reflective material. No obvious entrance was visible. "Artificial structure confirmed," Maya reported back to the ship. "Appears intact, no signs of recent use or habitation." "Maya," Kapoor called softly, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "Look at this." He was pointing at the violet moss carpet, which had begun rearranging itself behind them, forming distinct patterns where they had walked. "Is it tracking our footprints?" Diaz asked. Nazarov shook his head. "No, look closer. It's forming mathematical symbols, prime number sequences." Indeed, the moss was reshaping itself into recognizable mathematical notation, the universal language that UNEX used in first contact scenarios. "It's intelligent," Maya breathed. "The planet itself, or something on it. Or it's a trap," Diaz countered, "designed to lure in curious scientists." Before they could debate further, a low rumble shook the ground. The pyramid structure before them was changing, sections of its surface sliding apart to reveal a gaping entrance. "No one move," Maya ordered. "Vixen, are you recording this?" "Affirmative, Captain," came the eye's voice. "I am also detecting unusual energy signatures emanating from the structure. They match the patterns observed in orbit." A figure emerged from the pyramid's entrance, humanoid in basic shape, but clearly not human. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Where a human would have a face, it had only a smooth reflective surface that mirrored their own bewildered expressions back at them. "Greetings," Maya said, falling back on first contact protocol. "We come from the United Federation, on a mission of peaceful exploration." The figure did not respond verbally. Instead, the reflective surface of its face rippled, and symbols began to appear, the same mathematical notation that the moss had displayed. Nazarov quickly translated. "It's asking why we've returned." "Returned," Maya echoed. "We've never been here before." The figure's surface rippled again. "It says, you have come 18 times before. You have been absorbed 18 times before." A chill ran through the team. Diaz raised her rifle slightly. "Captain." The figure took a step forward, and the ground around it seemed to flow like liquid, despite appearing solid. More symbols appeared on its face. "This time will be different," Nazarov translated. "This time, we wish to communicate." "Ask it what happened to the previous expeditions," Maya instructed, keeping her voice steady. Nazarov didn't need to form the question. The figure was already answering. "They are here. They are part of us now, as you will be." The violet moss suddenly surged upward, wrapping around their ankles with surprising strength. Diaz fired her rifle, severing the tendrils around her feet, but more immediately grew to replace them. "Back to the shuttle," Maya ordered. "Now." They began retreating, fighting against the grasping moss with each step. The figure watched impassively, making no move to follow them. More symbols appeared on its face as they struggled. Nazarov, half-dragged by Diaz, managed to translate. The 19th will join willingly. The cycle nears completion. They reached the shuttle and sealed themselves inside, the moss slithering over the exterior, but unable to penetrate the hardened shell. Through the viewports, they could see the figure still standing motionless by the pyramid, watching them. "Get us out of here," Diaz urged. Maya's hands were already dancing across the controls. Launch sequence initiated. As the engines fired up, Kapoor was frantically downloading the sensor data they'd collected. "This changes everything we thought we knew about Deathworld evolution. That entity wasn't natural. It was technology and biology merged into something beyond both." The shuttle lifted off, moss tendrils stretching upward as if trying to maintain their grip before finally falling away. As they ascended, Maya noticed something alarming on the scanner. "The net is reforming in the upper atmosphere," she reported tersely, "and it's larger than before." "It's learning," Nazarov said, excitement overwhelming fear in his voice. "Adapting to our escape strategy." Maya plotted a course that would take them through a gap in the forming net. Vixen informed the improbable survival we're coming in hot and may need emergency extraction if this doesn't work. "Understood, Captain," the AI responded. "Dr. McKay is preparing the main engines for possible rapid departure." They shot through the atmosphere, the shuttle's hull heating dangerously as Maya pushed it beyond its designed acceleration parameters. The net structure loomed ahead, closing like a noose around their planned exit vector. "Hold on," Maya called, throwing the shuttle into a spin while firing specialized charges designed to disrupt biological systems. The charges detonated against the net, creating temporary gaps that they hurtled through, portions of the diaphanous structure brushing against their hull with an unnerving screech. And then they were through, shooting into the blackness of space, with the improbable survival waiting ahead. "We made it," Diaz breathed. But as they docked with the mothership, Kapoor's analyzer began beeping urgently. "Captain, we have a problem. I'm detecting unknown biological material on our hull. It's growing." Maya's eyes widened. "Decontamination protocols. Now. Full quarantine procedures." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew it might already be too late. Whatever intelligence controlled XR-27, it had been waiting for them, planning for them, and now it had come aboard. As alarms began to blare throughout the improbable survival, Maya couldn't shake the translated message from her mind. "The 19th will join willingly. The cycle nears completion." She had a terrible feeling they had just delivered exactly what the planet wanted. The silent intelligence. Quarantine protocols on the GSV improbable survival were nothing like those on civilian vessels. The ship had been specifically designed to handle contaminants from the galaxy's most lethal environments, which meant that within 90 seconds of Maya's order, the entire docking bay had been sealed off with energy fields and flooded with a cocktail of decontamination agents potent enough to break down almost any known biological material. Almost any. "It's still spreading," Dr. Rice reported, her face grim as she studied the containment feeds. The violet material they'd brought back from XR-27 was expanding across the shuttle's hull despite the decontamination measures, forming intricate, vein-like patterns. In the ship's emergency command center, a secondary bridge designed for crisis situations, Maya watched the feeds with growing concern. Vixen analysis. The AI's Fox avatar appeared, its expression unusually somber. The substance appears to be adapting to each countermeasure within minutes of exposure. It's demonstrating accelerated evolution at a cellular level. "That's impossible," Dr. McKay muttered. "Evolution doesn't work that way." "Tell that to the purple goo eating our shuttle," Diaz replied dryly. She had stripped off her contaminated environmental suit and undergone 3 separate decontamination procedures before being allowed to join the others. Kapoor and Nazarov remained in medical isolation for additional testing. It's not consuming the material, Rice corrected, zooming in on the microscopic feed. It's integrating with it, forming a new composite material that incorporates elements of our technology. Maya leaned forward. Is it sending data back to the planet? Unknown, Vixian replied. But I am detecting unusual energy signatures similar to those observed on the planet's surface. Sever all external communications, Maya ordered immediately. No signals in or out. Captain, Communications Officer Park interjected. We're supposed to check in with UNEX Central in 6 hours. If we miss that window, then they'll know something's wrong. Maya finished. Let's hope we've resolved this by then. McKay shook his head. What exactly is your plan here, Captain? We have an unknown, rapidly adapting biological contaminant aboard that our systems can't neutralize. Standard procedure calls for immediate evacuation and scuttling of the vessel. A heavy silence fell over the room. The improbable survival was more than just a ship to this crew. It was home, specially configured for their unique research needs and filled with years of invaluable data. We're not there yet, Maya said firmly. The contamination is still contained to the shuttle bay. Dr. Rice, what if we try extreme temperature variations, alternate between cryogenic freezing and plasma-level heat? Worth a try. Rice nodded. Nothing we've encountered before could survive that kind of thermal shock. Do it, Maya ordered, and prepare a physical isolation protocol. If this fails, we'll jettison the entire shuttle bay. As Reyes hurried to implement the new strategy, Maya turned to Park. Any word from Dr. Kapoor and Dr. Nazarov? Medical reports they're physically uncontaminated, Park replied, but Dr. Nazarov is behaving oddly. Maya frowned. Define oddly. He keeps writing mathematical equations and drawing diagrams. Dr. Lawson says they don't make any sense, at least not to human mathematics. I want to see him, Maya decided. Dias, you're with me. McKay, you have command. If the thermal shock doesn't work, don't wait. Jettison the bay. The medical bay was in lockdown mode, separate sealed chambers glowing with soft blue light. Dr. Lawson, the ship's chief medical officer, met them at the entrance. Captain, he greeted her, looking troubled. I was about to call you. Dr. Kapoor has cleared all biocontamination protocols, but Dr. Nazarov. Show me, Maya said. Lawson led them to an observation window. Inside the isolation chamber, Nazarov sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by dozens of paper sheets covered in strange symbols and diagrams. He was writing frantically, his movements jerky and precise. He demanded paper, Lawson explained. When we asked what was wrong, he said he needed to get it out before it changed him. Maya activated the intercom. Victor, it's Maya. Can you hear me? Nazarov's head snapped up, eyes locking onto hers with unnerving intensity. Captain, you need to see this. It's trying to communicate. What is? The network. The planetary mind. It's vast, beyond our comprehension. He held up one of his papers, pressing it against the window. It showed a complex web-like structure with a central node. This is just a fraction, a mere glimpse. Maya studied the diagram. Victor, were you exposed to something down there? Something we missed. Nazarov laughed, a strange, hollow sound. We all were. It's in the atmosphere, microscopic spores designed to interface with neural systems. But they only activated in me because he tapped his temple. Custom cerebral implants from the Proxima accident. The spores recognized the technology, used it as a conduit. Maya remembered Nazarov's personnel file. After a laboratory accident 3 years ago, he had received experimental neural implants to repair damage to his cerebral cortex. They had been considered a medical miracle. What is it showing you? She asked carefully. Everything. Nazarov's eyes were wide with wonder and fear. The previous expeditions. They're still there, Captain. Not dead. Absorbed. Integrated. Their consciousness, their memories, their knowledge, all preserved within the network. That's what the entity meant, Maya realized. They are here. They are part of us now. Dias shifted uncomfortably. So this planet is what? Collecting people. For what purpose? Knowledge, Nazarov whispered. The entity, it's not the planet itself. It's a constructed intelligence designed to accumulate and preserve information. The entire planetary ecosystem was engineered to serve it, to protect it. Who built it? Maya asked. Nazarov shook his head. Ancient. The builders are long gone, but their creation continues its primary function. Learn, grow, preserve. A chill ran down Maya's spine. And it wants to preserve us too. Yes. Nazarov met her gaze. But it's also afraid. Afraid. Of what? Before Nazarov could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. Maya's comm unit activated automatically. Captain, McKay's voice was tight with tension. The thermal shock protocol failed. The contaminant has adapted again. It's producing some kind of insulating layer. And now it's trying to breach the containment field. Jettison the bay, Maya ordered without hesitation. Already initiated. But Captain, we have another problem. We're detecting similar growth patterns in the ship's ventilation system near medical. It's spreading. Maya looked at Nazarov, still surrounded by his strange diagrams, then at Dias, whose hand had instinctively moved to her sidearm. Full ship lockdown, Maya commanded. Seal every compartment. Activate emergency life support in each section. Vixen, initiate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega initiated. The AI confirmed. Emergency beacon activated. All data being compressed for transmission to UNEX Central. Belay that last part, Maya countermanded. No transmissions. Nothing leaves this ship until we understand what we're dealing with. What's your plan, Captain? Dias asked quietly. Maya looked back at Nazarov. I think it's time we had a proper conversation with our stowaway. 6 hours later, the improbable survival had transformed from a research vessel into a battlefield. The violet growth had spread through nearly a third of the ship despite increasingly desperate containment efforts. The crew had retreated to the central core, where Vixen's primary systems were housed. It's following the data conduits, Kapoor observed, now fully cleared and working alongside the others, like it's drawn to information pathways. It's mapping our systems, Maya realized, learning our ship the same way we were trying to learn its planet. On the emergency bridge, they had assembled what Dias grimly called their last stand, a makeshift research station where Reyes Kapoor and McKay worked feverishly to understand the contaminant, while Dias and her security team prepared increasingly creative defensive measures. Physical barriers don't work for long, Dias reported. It just grows through them eventually. Energy fields slow it down, but don't stop it. We've had the most success with quantum disruption fields, but power consumption is massive. We can't maintain them ship-wide. We need to communicate with it, Maya decided. If Nazarov is right, and this thing was designed to preserve information, not destroy, there must be a way to reason with it. Reason with a purple fungus, McKay scoffed. Not the growth itself, Kapoor interjected. That's just an extension, a probe. The real intelligence is still on the planet, but these growths might serve as a communication relay. How do you propose we do that? Rise asked. It's not like we can just ask it nicely to stop eating our ship. Actually, came a new voice. We might be able to. Nazarov stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security officers. Maya had eventually ordered his conditional release from isolation, though he remained under constant watch. His eyes were clearer now, but there was still something unsettling about the intensity of his gaze. The patterns it's creating, they're not random, he continued, approaching the main display where VXEN was tracking the growth throughout the ship. Look here and here. He pointed to seemingly different growth clusters. There's symmetry, mathematical consistency. He's right. Vixen confirmed after a moment of analysis. The growth patterns do exhibit non-random structures consistent with information encoding. So it's trying to talk to us, Park asked. Or build something, Diaz countered darkly. Both, perhaps, Nazarov suggested. I think I can translate. At least partially. The spores in my system, they're providing a framework. Maya studied him carefully. Are you sure you're still you, Victor? Not influenced by this thing? Nazarov smiled thinly. None of us is ever truly just ourselves, Captain. We're all influenced by external factors. But yes, I believe my core cognition remains intact. The spores are more like a translation matrix. They don't control thoughts, they contextualize them. That's not exactly reassuring, Diaz muttered. What choice do we have? Maya asked quietly. We can't contain this thing indefinitely, and I'm not ready to abandon ship yet. If there's even a chance we can communicate. McKay shook his head. This is beyond reckless. We need to evacuate, nuke the ship from orbit, and inform UNEX that XR-27 is to be permanently quarantined. We've tried the scorched earth approach 18 times before, Maya reminded him. It's never worked. This entity, whatever it is, has survived everything thrown at it. Maybe it's time for a different approach. After a tense silence, McKay nodded reluctantly. You're the captain. But for the record, I think this is suicide. Noted, Maya acknowledged. Now let's try talking to our guest. They chose the primary science lab as their communication site. It was already partially overgrown with the violet material, which had formed intricate patterns across the walls and equipment. Vixen, are you monitoring? Maya asked as they entered, Diaz and her team providing armed escort. Affirmative, Captain, the AI responded. I have established quantum encrypted backups of my core programming in case of system corruption. Nazarov approached the largest concentration of growth, a pulsating mass that had engulfed an entire workstation. It's responding to our presence, he observed. Look how the patterns are shifting. Indeed, the growth was reorganizing itself, tendrils forming new configurations that seemed almost like written characters. I'm going to attempt direct contact, Nazarov announced, reaching toward the mass. Wait, Maya began, but it was too late. As Nazarov's fingers touched the violet surface, the material surged upward, encasing his hand. He gasped, not in pain, but in apparent surprise, his eyes widening. Diaz raised her weapon, but Maya signaled her to hold. Victor. It's remarkable, he whispered. I can feel its thoughts. Not words, exactly. More like concepts, pure information. He closed his eyes. It's curious, cautious. It recognizes us as new information sources, different from the previous expeditions. Ask why it's infiltrating our ship, Maya instructed. Nazarov was silent for a moment, his expression shifting through various emotions. Preservation, he finally said. That's the primary directive, but also protection. Protection from what? Diaz demanded. From the same fate as its creators, Nazarov replied, eyes still closed. They were destroyed by something they discovered, something they awakened. A chill ran through the room. It says, Nazarov continued, his voice becoming strained. The previous expeditions were too limited. Individual minds, limited perspective. It needs a more complete understanding. Access to our collective knowledge, our technology. It wants to assimilate us, Maya translated, like it did the others. Not exactly, Nazarov corrected. Not our bodies. Our information, our experiences, our understanding of the galaxy. It's been isolated here, abandoned by its creators, continuing its programming without context. Tell it that's not how we share information, Maya said firmly. We communicate, we don't absorb. Nazarov conveyed this somehow through his connection. The growth pulsed, rippling patterns shifting rapidly. It's Confused, he reported. The concept of separate, persistent individuality is foreign to it. In its experience, information and consciousness are transferable, mergeable resources. Well, it needs to learn new experiences, Diaz muttered. Suddenly, Nazarov stiffened, his free hand clutching at his chest. It's showing me something, he gasped. A memory, not its own, from one of the previous expeditions. On the lab's screens, images began to appear, disjointed at first, then coalescing into a coherent scene. It showed a research team, their uniforms identifying them as from the 11th expedition, nearly 50 years ago. They were excavating something from deep beneath the planet's surface, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. That's not part of the planetary intelligence, Kapoor realized, studying the footage. That's something else entirely. In the recording, the excavation team activated some kind of device near the crystal. There was a flash of light, and then nothing. The recording ended abruptly. What happened to them? Maya asked. Nazarov's face had gone pale. They triggered a defensive response. The crystal was a data storage node, containing information the planetary intelligence was programmed to protect at all costs. Information about the void. The void? McKay echoed. What does that mean? Before Nazarov could answer, the growth around his arm suddenly retracted, slithering back to evolution's bargain. The emergency shuttle of the GSV Improbable Survival was never designed for comfort. A utilitarian vessel meant for short evacuations to nearby rescue points, it now housed the surviving crew members as they watched their ship transform into something unrecognizable. Through the viewport, Maya observed the Improbable Survival's once familiar silhouette now shrouded in pulsating violet growth that had completely engulfed the hull. Occasional flashes of energy crackled across its surface like neural impulses racing through a vast brain. What's it doing? Rise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Integrating, Kapoor replied. Incorporating our technology into its network. Maya turned away from the viewport. Status report. Life support stable for 72 hours, Park reported from the shuttle's compact control panel. Communications are operational, but there's some kind of interference preventing long-range transmissions. We can't reach UNEX Central. Weapons systems? Maya asked. Diaz shook her head. Minimal. One short-range kinetic cannon. 2 targeting drones. Nothing that would make a dent in whatever the ship is becoming. A heavy silence descended on the cabin. The unspoken question hung in the air. What had happened to Nazarov? Incoming transmission, Park suddenly announced. It's coming from the Improbable Survival. Put it through, Maya ordered, steeling herself. The shuttle's main screen flickered to life, showing not the violet growth they expected, but Nazarov himself. He appeared unchanged physically, though his eyes now held an unnaturally reflective quality, capturing and refracting light in subtle violet hues. Nazarov, Maya ventured. Yes and no, came the reply, his voice overlaid with harmonic undertones that created an echoing effect. I am still Victor Nazarov, but I am also custodian now. We are integrated. Are you still you? McKay demanded. Or is this thing just wearing your face? A smile flickered across Nazarov's features. An interesting philosophical question, Aiden. Am I still me if my consciousness has expanded to include millennia of collected experiences? If I can access the memories of 18 previous expeditions as easily as my own? If I understand the fundamental mathematics of reality on a level no human mind was designed to comprehend? That's not an answer, Diaz muttered. The truest answer I can give, Nazarov replied, is that I remain Victor Nazarov, but I am more now. My individuality persists within a vastly expanded framework. Maya stepped forward. You promised information about the void. We upheld our end of the bargain. Now it's your turn. Nazarov nodded. Custodian honors its agreements. The data transfer is beginning now. The shuttle systems chirped as an incoming data stream activated. Park swiveled to check the console. It's a massive file package, Captain. Terabytes of compressed data. Can you verify its contents? Maya asked. Partially, Park replied, fingers dancing across the controls. It appears to contain astronomical data, theoretical physics models, historical records, far more than our systems can fully process. Nazarov's image leaned forward slightly. The data includes everything Custodian has collected regarding the void, its origins, behavior patterns, and projected trajectory through our galaxy. It also contains the complete scientific knowledge of the builders, the civilization that created Custodian. And what happened to them? Rise asked. They encountered the void approximately 2.7 million years ago, Nazarov explained, his voice taking on a mechanical precision. Their civilization spanned 27 star systems in what you now call the Cygnus Arm. When their long-range sensors detected the approaching anomaly, they initially believed it to be a natural phenomenon, perhaps a new type of cosmic ray burst or spatial distortion. The screen beside Nazarov's image displayed star charts showing a spreading darkness, systems winking out one by one. By the time they understood its true nature, 17 of their core worlds had already been consumed, he continued. The void doesn't destroy matter in the conventional sense. It unravels the information patterns that define reality, reducing complex structures to their most basic, chaotic state. Consciousness, technology, even the fundamental laws of physics, all become undone within its influence. That's impossible, McKay protested. The laws of physics are universal constants. They are patterns, Nazarov corrected, mathematically elegant patterns that emerge from the primordial information state of the universe. The void corrupts these patterns, creating regions where causality itself breaks down. Maya studied the images with growing dread. And this thing is heading toward populated space. Yes, based on its current trajectory and expansion rate, it will reach the outer colonies of the United Federation within approximately 372 years. The cabin fell silent as the implications sank in. Why didn't Custodian just tell us this from the beginning? Diaz finally asked. Why absorb 18 expeditions? Custodian was programmed with two primary directives, Nazarov explained. Preserve knowledge and warn others of the void. But it lacked the means to leave this planet. Each expedition provided more information, more technology, but none possessed the necessary components for Custodian to fulfill its warning directive. Until now. Something in his tone made Maya tense. What do you mean, until now? The improbable survival contains advanced quantum communication technology, capable of transmitting data across vast distances instantaneously. With this capability integrated into its network, Custodian can finally broadcast its warning throughout the galaxy. And our shuttle? Maya asked carefully. Nazarov's expression softened slightly. You are free to leave, as agreed. Your sacrifice, my sacrifice, has fulfilled Custodian's needs. Maya wasn't convinced. Just like that. After 18 expeditions, you're letting us go. The circumstances are different now, Nazarov replied. Previous expeditions arrived without the technology Custodian required. Their absorption was necessary but insufficient. With my integration and the ship's capabilities, the primary objective can now be accomplished. And what happens after you send your warning? Kapoor asked. What's Custodian's plan for actually stopping this void? A strange expression crossed Nazarov's face, something like uncertainty, perhaps the first truly human emotion they'd seen since the transmission began. That is unclear, he admitted. The builders created Custodian to preserve and warn, not to combat the void directly. They believed that given enough time and information, younger species might develop solutions they could not. So your plan is to terrify the galaxy about an unstoppable cosmic horror with no known countermeasures. McKay scoffed. That seems counterproductive. Not entirely, Nazarov countered. The data package includes theoretical models for potential containment strategies developed by the builders in their final days. Unproven, but promising. And with the combined scientific knowledge of multiple civilizations, plus whatever advances your people have made, Maya considered this. We need to get this information back to Federation scientists immediately. If what you're saying is true, we need to start preparing now, not when this thing is on our doorstep. Nazarov nodded. Agreed. Which brings me to a proposal. Maya's eyes narrowed. What kind of proposal? Your shuttle lacks the range to reach the nearest UNEX outpost, Nazarov pointed out. Even at maximum efficiency, your life support will fail long before you arrive. He was right, though none of them had wanted to acknowledge it. The emergency shuttle was designed for short-range evacuation to nearby rescue points, not long-distance independent travel. The improbable survival, however, Nazarov continued, remains fully functional despite its modifications. Its engines, life support, and navigation systems are intact and operating at optimal capacity. You're offering us a ride home? Diaz asked skeptically. In a manner of speaking, Nazarov replied. Custodian proposes a mutual exchange. You return to the ship, and we transport you to the nearest UNEX outpost. In return, you allow Custodian to accompany you. Absolutely not, McKay stated flatly. The moment we set foot back on that ship, we'll be absorbed just like Nazarov. That is not Custodian's intention, Nazarov insisted. Your biological patterns have been thoroughly analyzed and deemed incompatible for optimal integration. Custodian has no desire to absorb unwilling or unsuitable consciousness patterns. How reassuring, Diaz muttered. Maya raised a hand for silence. Let me understand this correctly. You're proposing that we return to the ship, which you now control, and you'll take us to an UNEX outpost, where you'll do what exactly? Present the evidence regarding the void, Nazarov explained. Offer Custodian's collected knowledge to your scientists. Begin collaboration on potential defense strategies. And if UNEX decides this void story is a hoax, if they choose to quarantine or destroy Custodian instead. Nazarov's expression remained impassive. That would be unfortunate but unlikely given the comprehensive nature of the evidence. Custodian is prepared to submit to reasonable containment protocols while verification proceeds. Maya turned away from the screen, gesturing for the others to gather in a tight circle out of the transmission's audio range. Thoughts, she whispered. It's a trap, Diaz said immediately. Get us back on the ship, then finish what it started. Maybe, Rice conceded, but our alternatives are limited. Park, what's our actual range with current supplies? Park grimaced. Even with strict rationing, we'll run out of oxygen before we reach any habitable system. The interference is blocking our distress signal, unless a passing ship happens to detect us, which is unlikely in this sector, McKay finished. We're effectively stranded. Maya considered their options. If Nazarov wanted to absorb us, why offer the data package at all? Why not just disable our shuttle remotely? The ship's systems could easily override our controls. A fair point, Kapoor acknowledged. And the data does appear legitimate from what we can analyze. So we're betting our lives on the benevolence of an alien AI that's already hijacked our ship and one of our crew members. Diaz asked incredulously. We're betting on Nazarov, Maya corrected. Whatever he's become, he was our colleague first. If any part of him remains in that collective consciousness, the decision weighed heavily on Maya. Risk returning to a ship now controlled by an entity they barely understood, or face certain death, drifting in space. Neither option was appealing. We need assurances, she finally decided, turning back to the screen. Nazarov, if we accept your proposal, we require certain conditions. Name them, he replied. First, the ship remains under my command for navigation and operations. Custodian can advise but not override my authority. Nazarov nodded. Acceptable, with the caveat that Custodian retains control of systems directly integrated with its network. Approximately 37% of the ship's functions are now biologically interfaced. Second, no further integration attempts on any crew member without explicit informed consent. Agreed. Third, upon reaching the UNEX outpost, custodian will submit to containment and quarantine protocols as determined by Federation scientists until the void data can be verified. Nazarov paused, his expression flickering slightly. Custodian agrees, provided such containment does not prevent completion of the warning directive. The message must be distributed. Maya took a deep breath. Final condition. If at any point I determine custodian represents an immediate threat to my crew or the Federation, I retain the right to implement emergency countermeasures. Define countermeasures, Nazarov requested. The improbable survival's core contains a quantum destabilization device, Maya revealed, a last resort for dealing with particularly hazardous Deathworld contaminants. It would effectively erase the ship and everything on it from existence. Silence stretched for several long moments. When Nazarov spoke again, his voice carried a new harmonic, deeper and somehow older than before. Custodian has existed for 2.7 million years, with the sole purpose of warning others about a threat that erases existence, he said slowly. The irony of potentially being erased by those it seeks to warn is noted. Nevertheless, condition accepted. The improbable survival was both familiar and utterly alien when they returned. The corridors they had walked 1,000 times were now lined with pulsating violet growths that formed intricate, shifting patterns. The air carried a strange, not unpleasant scent reminiscent of ozone and ocean depths. The life support systems have been enhanced, Nazarov explained as he led them through the transformed ship. Atmospheric composition has been optimized for human cognitive function while incorporating beneficial compounds derived from builder biology. It smells like someone put seaweed in a Tesla coil, Diaz remarked, weapons still clutched tightly despite Nazarov's assurances. An apt if imprecise comparison, Nazarov acknowledged with what almost seemed like amusement. His physical form remained unchanged, though the violet reflections in his eyes had intensified, and occasionally his skin seemed to ripple with subsurface patterns. They reached the bridge, now a hybrid of familiar UNEX technology and the organic computational structures of custodian. The traditional consoles remained, but new interfaces had grown alongside them, crystalline structures that pulsed with light in complex sequences. The ship's capabilities have been significantly enhanced, Nazarov explained. Computational power has increased by approximately 4,200%, sensor range by 780%. Propulsion systems have been reconfigured for greater efficiency. Can it still reach an UNEX outpost? Maya asked. Yes. The nearest is Starbase 47, approximately 2 weeks' journey at our enhanced velocity. Maya nodded. Set course. I want regular updates on our status. As the crew cautiously took their positions at the modified but still functional stations, Maya pulled Nazarov aside. I need to speak with you privately. He followed her to the captain's ready room, which had undergone less extensive modification than the rest of the ship. Only a few tendrils of violet growth curved along the corners of the ceiling, pulsing softly. How much of you is still Nazarov? Maya asked bluntly once the door closed behind them. A complex question, he replied. My memories, personality structures, and core values remain intact. But they now exist within a vastly expanded framework. Imagine your consciousness suddenly gaining access to the experiences of thousands of other minds, plus information accumulated over millions of years. That would drive most people insane. It nearly did, he admitted. The integration process was challenging. My mind required significant restructuring to accommodate the expanded input, but the process preserved what made me essentially Victor. Maya studied him closely. And what does custodian get from this arrangement? Why maintain your individual identity at all? Perspective, Nazarov explained. Custodian has absorbed consciousness patterns from 18 previous expeditions, but it always dissolved them, incorporated them fully into its collective. It never attempted to maintain their distinct identities because it didn't understand the value of individual viewpoints. What changed? You did, he said simply. Your team's resistance, your insistence on maintaining separation. It presented a new paradigm. Custodian realized that preserving distinct consciousness patterns might offer advantages, different ways of processing the same information. So we're an experiment. More like an evolution, Nazarov corrected. Custodian was designed to learn, to adapt. It's following that programming by exploring new methods of integration. Maya wasn't entirely convinced, but they had little choice now but to proceed. We'll reach Starbase 47 in 2 weeks. What happens then? That depends largely on how UNEX responds, Nazarov said. Custodian hopes for collaboration, sharing knowledge, developing strategies against the void. But it's prepared for skepticism, even hostility. And if they try to destroy it, contain it permanently. A shadow passed across Nazarov's features. Custodian has survived 2.7 million years and 18 previous extinction attempts. It would prefer not to add another to that list. The implied threat wasn't lost on Maya. Remember our agreement. Of course, Nazarov nodded. But remember also what's at stake. The void is real, Maya, and it's coming. The journey to Starbase 47 proceeded with an uneasy truce between the crew and their transformed ship. Day by day, they adapted to the new reality of working alongside Custodian's extensions, learning to interpret the shifting patterns of the violet growth that now permeated every section of the vessel. Against all expectations, Custodian honored its agreements. No further integration attempts were made, and the ship's enhanced systems performed flawlessly under Maya's command. If anything, the journey was smoother than any the improbable survival had ever managed before. In the quiet hours between duty shifts, crew members would sometimes find Nazarov standing motionless in observation areas, eyes reflecting violet light as he communed with the vast network that had become part of him. Few approached him during these moments, but those who did reported conversations of startling depth and complexity. It showed me the builder's homeworld, Kapoor told Maya after one such encounter. Not just images. I could feel the gravity, smell the atmosphere. They were beautiful beings, Maya. 6-limbed crystalline structures that communicated through light patterns. Their cities were grown, not built, using principles we barely understand. And they were completely wiped out, Maya asked. All but one final outpost, Kapoor confirmed. They poured their remaining resources into creating Custodian, transferring their entire civilization's knowledge into its network before the void reached them. Similar reports came from other crew members who ventured to speak with Nazarov. He shared glimpses of long-extinct civilizations, scientific principles beyond current Federation understanding, philosophical concepts that had evolved over millions of years. Gradually, the crew's fear began to give way to cautious fascination. Even Diaz found herself engaged in lengthy discussions about defensive technologies developed by ancient species. 1 week into their journey, Maya called a senior staff meeting to discuss their approach to the upcoming contact with UNEX authorities. We need a unified strategy, she explained as they gathered in the conference room. When we reach Starbase 47, we'll be asked to explain what happened to our ship and crew. How we present Custodian will determine whether it's treated as a first contact situation or a hostile entity. The evidence package is compelling, McKay admitted, having spent days analyzing the data Custodian had provided. The mathematical models of the void's expansion are consistent with observed astronomical anomalies in the Cygnus arm that have puzzled our scientists for decades. But will UNEX believe us? Park wondered. Or will they see a contaminated ship returning with an unbelievable story and decide to sanitize the problem? That's why we need to approach this carefully, Maya agreed. We present the evidence first, establish the reality of the threat, then introduce Custodian as a potential ally. And if they don't buy it? Diaz asked. Before Maya could answer, Nazarov entered the conference room. Unlike previous meetings, where he had maintained a respectful distance from the crew's discussions, this time he approached the table directly. Custodian has been considering this problem, he announced without preamble. and has developed a potential solution that would satisfy both its directive and UNEX's likely security concerns. We're listening, Maya said cautiously. The improbable survival has been fully integrated with Custodian's network. However, that integration could be selectively reversed. Meaning what exactly? McKay asked. Custodian could withdraw from approximately 78% of the ship's systems, retaining only the core data storage and communication arrays, Nazarov explained. This would allow UNEX to verify the ship is not a threat while still preserving Custodian's essential functions. And what about you? Maya asked quietly. Nazarov's expression softened. My integration is more complex. The neural pathways that connect me to Custodian are deeply embedded. Reversing the process completely would likely result in significant neural damage. So you stay as you are, Dias concluded. Not necessarily, Nazarov countered. Custodian has been exploring the possibility of a hybrid state, maintaining the connection but with greater autonomy, more defined boundaries between my consciousness and the collective. Is that what you want? Maya asked. Nazarov was silent for a long moment. What I want, he finally said, is to ensure the warning is delivered. Beyond that, he shrugged. I am still discovering what this new existence means. The discussion continued for hours, strategies proposed and discarded, contingencies planned for every possible UNEX response. When they finally adjourned, Maya found herself standing alone with Nazarov in the emptied conference room. There's something you're not telling us, she said directly. Something about what happens when we reach the starbase. Nazarov didn't deny it. Custodian has detected a pattern in the void's movement that the builders never had time to fully analyze. It appears to be attracted to certain types of quantum communications, the same technology UNEX uses for instantaneous interstellar messages. Maya felt a chill run through her. Are you saying that by broadcasting the warning, we could actually attract this thing?